They thought I wouldn't check the filing date. They thought I'd be too scared to challenge someone with a corner office and a famous last name. But I had one thing they didn't: a paper trail that bites back. The first time I saw him, he didn't even knock, just barged in, white dress shirt half tucked, Rolex too big for his wrist, and the kind of grin that belonged more at a country club bar than inside a patent review meeting. He looked 25, maybe. Arrogance doesn't age well, but on him it was still in its prime. "Hey," he said, dropping into the chair across from me like he'd been running this place since birth. Maybe he thought he had. "You're the girl who wrote the hydrogen logic system thing, right?" he asked, flipping through a folder he clearly hadn't read. I paused. My name was on the cover. My name was on the circuit architecture, the efficiency maps, the efficiency to scale formula, the early beta runs, all of it. "Yes," I said carefully. "I'm Dr. Ellen Harper. I invented it." He smirked like I'd told a joke. "Cool. Dad said I could help polish it. He wants my name on the final version before it goes to the patent office. I'll put my name on it next week." The walls in that office were thin. I wondered how many heard it. I wondered if anyone would say a word. The CEO's son, his full name was Blake Freeman III, had only been employed at Firma for 3 weeks. No job title, no posted resume, no HR welcome email. Just appeared one morning with a badge and an assistant. My assistant, actually. When I asked HR about the change, they told me it was a strategic reassignment. I checked the Zoom invite from the CEO's office later that afternoon. Innovation Talent Sync, Blake's first deep dive. He hadn't even opened the GitHub logs. 2 days later, I caught him in the lab making notes on my whiteboard, not collaborative notes. He'd erased the original test cycles, replaced them with optimization ideas, Blake V. I took a photo before erasing it back. Then I emailed myself the photo with the timestamp. That was the moment I felt it, the shift. That electric, uncomfortable awareness that something you built is being quietly lifted from your hands. You know it's yours. But now, someone with louder connections and cleaner shoes is hovering over it with a Sharpie and a sense of entitlement. I checked the inventor register that night. 8 months before he ever walked through Firma's glass doors, I had filed the full design outline with legal counsel, internal IP, and backup to the patent office. 3 independent witnesses had signed the engineering logbook. I even had Slack messages with my old project manager confirming development dates. But I knew none of that would matter if I didn't move smart and fast. Because this wasn't about science anymore. It was about names, narratives, and who could speak loudest in the boardroom. The next day, my inbox pinged. Subject: Authorship Merge Draft. From Blake Freeman. CC CEO Office Legal Preliminary Review. No greeting, no context, just a PDF where his name now appeared as co-inventor. He hadn't touched a single transistor. I didn't scream. I printed the email, highlighted the file creation date, attached my original inventor timestamps, and I walked to HR. Their reaction? A tight smile, a nod, a vague, "We'll review the process for handling authorship claims." Review it? It was in the handbook. Page 83, but rules bend for bloodlines. That night, I sat on the balcony with a copy of the U.S. Patent Office's digital receipt dated and sealed. The clouds above the city looked like they were holding their breath. So was I, because once someone like Blake starts rewriting credits, the next step isn't asking, it's erasing, and no one warns you when it starts. They didn't know I had a witness, and he had a badge number and a reason to talk. The security guard's name was Joel. Most people didn't notice him. He stood near the freight elevators, watching badges blip green and red all day. But I remembered him from late nights during a prototype phase. When I was running heat simulations at 11 p.m. with a vending machine dinner, Joel would sometimes bring over a coffee. "You building rockets back there?" he joked once. "Something like that," I smiled. He didn't ask questions after that, but he noticed everything. So when I asked if he could check the access log for the day Blake entered the lab with the whiteboard marker, Joel didn't hesitate. "I'll need your project code," he said, eyes flicking to the nearby camera. "And a reason." I gave him both. He scrolled through his tablet, slow and methodical, lips pressed tight. "There." He turned the screen toward me. Badge entry, 8:42 a.m., solo, no lab clearance requested. "That room has restricted access." Joel nodded. And he didn't have it. That's why I flagged it that day. He looked at me, voice low. I sent an alert to Internal Affairs. Didn't hear back. Internal Affairs at Firma was like a ghost department. You could email them, you could tag them in Slack, but unless you tripped a lawsuit or a federal policy, they didn't show up, and definitely not for something as minor as patent authorship. But what they couldn't ignore was a paper trail, so I built one. I pulled my backup logs. Every Gantt chart from the early design phase, every tracked edit on the architecture prototype, every version history in Excel. My working title had been HLSL-W1, Hydrogen Logic System, Alien version DAO1, the same code Blake had erased from the whiteboard. He didn't even rename the file, just duplicated it and added a new tab, V2 Final WBF. BF. It felt like a branding tag on stolen work. I took the file and uploaded it to a private backup folder. Then I printed everything, color-coded and stapled. At the bottom of each sheet, I stamped a single line. Filed, U.S. Patent Provisional No. 448 UNA, authored by Dr. Ellen Harper, Jan 8. 8 months before Blake's hire date. 8 months before the CEO casually called my invention a collaborative development. I walked into the patent office legal correspondence room 2 days later with a canvas folder and a headache. The room was quiet, cobalt carpet, white walls, framed diagrams of old designs. A receptionist took my documents without flinching, handed me a barcode receipt and said, "You'll hear from legal within 10 business days, possibly sooner." It took 6 minutes. My phone buzzed as I walked back to the parking garage. Subject, inquiry response, authorship protection. From U.S. Patent Legal Officer. I opened the email. One sentence stood out like a lighthouse through fog. Attempted authorship modification is invalid under Power 37 CFR 1.48. Authorship rights protected as filed. The weight that dropped off my chest made me stagger slightly, but I didn't smile yet, because things at Firma were never that simple. The next morning, I walked into the office and everyone was quiet. Not the usual Monday morning quiet, the kind that drips from the walls. Someone had seen the email, someone had forwarded it, and suddenly, Blake wasn't smiling anymore. He passed me in the hallway and muttered, "This isn't over." And I muttered back without stopping, "No, it's finally documented." The CEO didn't email me, he summoned me to the 39th floor, and the elevator ride alone was a warning. Has someone ever tried to erase you from your own work? Share your story in the comments. Your voice deserves to be heard. The 39th floor didn't have cubicles. It had glass. Frosted for privacy, but thin enough to feel like everyone was always watching, without ever being seen. The elevator dinged in eerie silence. No chatter, no hum of printers. Just the click of my heels echoing down the hallway like a countdown. The CEO's office was at the end, behind a set of automatic doors that whispered open like something out of a courtroom drama. He was waiting. "Ellen," he said without looking up. His voice was smoother than usual, measured, almost rehearsed. He gestured to the chair across from him, as if this was a brainstorming session, not a confrontation. I sat, carefully placing my folder on the edge of the glass table. A pause, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So," he began, "I heard you reached out to the patent office." There it was. No small talk, no pretending, just the pressure drop before a storm. "Yes," I said steady. "There was an unauthorized authorship claim." His smile thinned. "Blake didn't mean any harm," he said, leaning back. "He's passionate. He wants to be involved in the future of this company." I met his gaze. Involvement doesn't mean taking credit. He steepled his fingers. "Let's not turn this into a thing. The media loves drama, especially when a headline can read, 'Young innovator disrupted by internal conflict.' That's not good for anyone." My heart knocked once, hard, but I didn't flinch. He slid a paper across the desk. A revised acknowledgement agreement. It stated that, while Dr. Harper was instrumental in early-stage ideation, the final application represented a collaborative evolution between departments, including strategic leadership from executive stakeholders. In plain English, they wanted me to sign away credit. Again, this time legally. I didn't touch the paper. "Have you read the patent office's response?" I asked. "I have." He said it like it didn't matter. I opened my folder, took out the original register form, the time-stamped lab log, and the printed legal statement confirming full authorship rights under federal protection. I slid them back across to him. He didn't reach for them. Instead, he sighed and leaned forward. "Look, Ellen, you're talented. You're respected. But don't let this become a fight you'll regret. Sometimes it's smarter to compromise." I tilted my head. "I didn't come here to compromise," I said. "I came here to document that you knowingly attempted to alter federal IP records after legal authorship was confirmed, and I'd like that recorded in writing." The pause that followed was thick. The windows behind him reflected both of us. Him, still, corporate, buttoned up, me, calm and no longer afraid. He finally picked up the paper I'd brought, scanned it, then looked up with something almost like admiration and a lot like irritation. "Very well," he said, "but be aware, this will have consequences." I smiled softly. "I'm counting on it." I stood, picked up my folder, and walked out. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. The sky outside had darkened, storm rolling in, but I didn't mind. Because the ground under me, it was finally solid. He warned me about consequences. He had no idea mine came with timestamps, emails, and a surprise Zoom link. By Wednesday, the building felt different. Not louder, not quieter, sharper. People smiled a fraction longer, then looked away. Conversations stopped when I passed. Someone from finance pretended to take a call just to avoid eye contact. The rumor had already outpaced the truth, which meant it had been shaped. That's how corporations bleed you, slowly, politely, with plausible deniability. At 9:17 a.m., my calendar updated itself. Meeting added IP alignment discussion, attendees, legal, HR, innovation oversight. Organizer, CEO's office, no agenda, no documents attached. That alone was the message. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and expensive cologne. Legal sat closest to the screen. HR took the side seats, their favorite position when accountability might bounce. Blake arrived last, still confident, still smiling. But there was a twitch in his jaw now, a hurry in his movements. He nodded at me like we were old teammates. "Morning," he said. "Crazy week, huh?" I didn't answer. The legal counsel cleared her throat and pulled up a slide titled Authorship Clarification Framework. Frameworks were how they avoided words like theft. She spoke carefully about alignment, about internal misunderstandings, about the importance of preserving company harmony. Each sentence was polished enough to slide right past responsibility. Then Blake leaned forward. "I just want to say," he began, voice smooth, "I never intended to override anyone's work. I was advised that collaborative credit was standard practice." Advised. That word landed like a smoke bomb. HR perked up at that. "By whom?" one of them asked, pen already hovering. Blake hesitated, just half a second too long. "I don't remember exactly," he said. "There were emails, meetings. It was implied." "Implied by who?" The room waited. I opened my laptop. Not dramatically, not angrily, just enough. "I do," I said. Every head turned. "I remember exactly who said what, and when," I continued. Because after the first authorship draft appeared with his name added, I forwarded every related communication to myself, with headers, with timestamps. I clicked once. Emails filled the screen, one from Blake, one from legal, before the patent office response, one from HR marked informal guidance. Silence stretched. The legal counsel adjusted her glasses. "That email," she said slowly, pointing, "was not approved language." "No," I agreed. "It was actionable language." The room shifted. HR stopped writing. Blake leaned back, crossed his arms too tightly. The air thickened, like before a summer storm. "This changes the scope of the discussion," legal said. And just like that, the meeting ended. Not with a resolution, with a recalibration. At my desk later, I noticed something else. My access permissions had changed. Nothing obvious, just enough delays to slow me down. Shared folders taking longer to load. Calendar edits requiring approval. A quiet suggestion that maybe, just maybe, I should feel unwelcome. They couldn't take the invention, so they tried to take the space around me. I packed my bag slowly that evening, not because I was leaving, but because I was preparing. Because when an organization starts closing doors softly, it's usually because someone else is about to open one loudly, and they don't know it yet. By Friday morning, my badge hesitated at the turnstile, not long enough to set off alarms, just long enough to make a point. A soft red blink, then green. The kind of delay designed to whisper, "We're watching you." At my desk, the shared drive reorganized itself overnight. Folders renamed, permissions reshuffled. The inventor register shortcut, gone. Replaced with a generic innovation archive, locked behind approval requests that routed through legal. I didn't panic. I smiled, because none of that touched what mattered. At 10:03 a.m., I received a Zoom invite from an unfamiliar address. Subject: Documentation review, external counsel duration. 15 minutes required. Yes, no firm logo, no internal branding. That was unusual. Unusual enough to matter. The call opened to a woman with silver hair pulled into a sharp bun and eyes that missed nothing. Her background was neutral. No art, no diplomas, no signals. "Dr. Harper," she said, "I represent the Patent Office's Advisory Council. This call is on record." Blake's name appeared briefly in the waiting room, then vanished. He'd been invited. He'd been removed. "We received a follow-up inquiry from your employer," she continued calmly, "requesting clarification on post-filing authorship adjustments." I leaned back in my chair, slowly. "Yes," I said. "I expected that." She nodded once. "They cited internal collaboration claims." "And you?" I asked. "We cited federal law." Her tone didn't change, but something sharpened beneath it. She shared her screen, a timeline, my filings, my drafts, my witness confirmations. The exact moment the authorship alteration was attempted, down to the minute. Then another slide, a policy reference, highlighted. Any attempt to coerce, imply, or retroactively alter inventorship following submission constitutes a violation subject to notice. Notice, not warning. Your employer has been informed, she said, formally. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. When the call ended, my inbox refreshed. 3 new emails, one from legal, urgent, requesting a clarifying conversation, one from HR, inviting me to discuss workplace well-being, and one from the CEO's assistant, marked high priority, no subject line. That one I didn't open. Not yet. Instead, I walked past Blake's office. The blinds were half drawn. He was pacing, phone pressed tight to his ear, voice low and sharp. His confidence had cracked. Not shattered, just enough to let panic breathe. As I passed, his eyes met mine through the glass. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Back at my desk, I finally opened the last email, a single sentence. Please join a leadership call at 4:00 p.m. This is not optional. I checked the attendee list. CEO, legal, HR director, external counsel, and me, no Blake. At 3:58, the office lights dimmed automatically for evening energy savings. The floor hummed. The city outside turned gold, then gray. I joined the call right on time. Muted. Watching. Because when systems realize they've overreached, they don't apologize, they negotiate, and I had already decided what I would and wouldn't accept. The 4:00 p.m. Zoom call opened like a stage curtain. One by one, squares lit up, faces arranged in neat corporate symmetry, like a digital courtroom where everyone pretended the verdict was still pending. The CEO sat in his office with the skyline behind him. Legal looked pale under fluorescent light. HR had chosen a soothing background of abstract shapes, as if pastel blobs could soften reality. And then there was the external counsel. No background, no smile, no patience. "Good afternoon," she said. "Let's proceed." I kept my posture steady, shoulder blades anchored, hands out of frame. Calm is a weapon when people expect tears. The CEO tried first. "Dr. Harper," he began, voice warm in the way expensive wood feels warm, polished, practiced, slightly fake. "We value your contribution to Firma. No one disputes your talent, but we also have to consider internal cohesion." Cohesion. That word again. It floated around corporate rooms like perfume, strong enough to mask a rot you weren't supposed to name. "I agree," I said. "Cohesion works best when facts are respected." A micro pause. Legal shifted. The external counsel didn't waste time. An attempt was made to alter inventorship post-filing, she said, looking directly into her camera. The patent office has documented the attempt. Any further pressure on the inventor would elevate the matter. Elevate. Such a gentle verb for a legal landslide. HR leaned forward. We're not pressuring anyone, she said quickly. We're simply managing risk, the external counsel finished for her. Yes, that's obvious. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Then legal spoke, carefully choosing each word like it might explode. We'd like to propose a resolution that protects all parties, she said. A statement affirming Dr. Harper as sole inventor with an internal acknowledgement of collaborative support from other team members. I blinked once. Which team members? I asked. Legal hesitated. General stakeholders. Stakeholders, another perfume word. I could feel the CEO's irritation tightening behind his smile. He changed tactics. Ellen, he said, leaning closer to the camera, voice dropping into that intimate tone leaders use when they want obedience to feel like trust. You've made your point. Let's move forward without escalating this into something bigger than it needs to be. There it was, an invitation wrapped around a threat. I tilted my head. Bigger than it needs to be for whom? The CEO's jaw twitched, micro, but visible. HR jumped in fast, as if speed could outrun truth. We want to support you, she said. We've also received concerns about workplace tone. Some colleagues felt uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. A classic corporate ghost accusation. No names, no incidents, just vague discomfort, weaponized. I nodded slowly. I understand. I'd like those concerns in writing, with dates, names, and specific examples, so they can be addressed properly. HR froze. That was the moment the power balance shifted. You could practically hear the air change. External counsel watched, expression unreadable. Documented specifics are appropriate, she said. Given the federal nature of the filing, transparency is advisable. Legal swallowed. The CEO leaned back. In their minds, I wasn't supposed to know how to ask for that. I was supposed to shrink, to feel guilty for defending myself, to accept a soft emotion disguised as peace. Instead, I asked for receipts. The CEO tried to steer again. What do you want? He asked, the warmth draining out of his voice. I answered evenly. I want the inventor register restored to its original access permissions today. I want a written correction to the internal IP memo stating that I am the sole inventor. I want Blake's unauthorized authorship draft removed from all internal records. And I want confirmation that no retaliatory restrictions will be placed on my system's access. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. But I watched their faces. Legal's eyes flicked downward, taking mental notes. HR's lips parted slightly, calculating. The CEO's expression tightened, like someone realizing the game changed rules mid-play. Then the external counsel spoke again, calm and final. These requests are reasonable, she said. I suggest you comply. The CEO held her gaze through the camera for a second too long. It was the corporate equivalent of being pinned. Fine, he said at last, clipped. Legal will draft the statement. And that should have felt like victory. But I'd been in this building long enough to know when a system agrees too quickly, it's usually because it's moving to the next move, not the obvious one, the hidden one. As the Zoom call ended, I received a notification on my screen. Access, request approved, inventor register. A second notification popped up immediately after. New calendar event. Added, performance alignment check-in. Organizer, HR director, time, Monday, 8 a.m., no agenda, just a date, a time, and a quiet promise that the fight wasn't over, only changing shape. I closed my laptop slowly. Outside, the city lights flickered on like a row of witnesses. And somewhere behind glass walls and soft carpeting, someone was already writing the next version of the story. I just had to make sure it wouldn't be theirs. Monday arrived too early, like it always does when something important is scheduled. The building was quieter than usual at 7:45 a.m. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just tense. Lights hummed awake row by row, motion sensors blinking like half-open eyes. I noticed security cameras more than I used to. Once you learn how systems watch, you start watching back. The performance alignment check-in was set for a small HR room on the 21st floor. No glass walls this time. No audience. Just neutral paint, a fake plant in the corner, and a table that felt intentionally too wide. Distance as a tactic. HR was already there when I walked in. "Good morning, Ellen," the HR director said brightly, as if we were meeting to discuss vacation days. A laptop was open in front of her. No paper. That meant everything would be summarized later. "I want to start by saying how much we value you," she continued. "Your innovation has put Firma in an excellent position." Valued. Another word that often precedes loss. I nodded once and waited. She clicked to the first slide. Topic: Team dynamics and perception. Not performance, not results. Perception. "We've received feedback," she said carefully, "that your recent actions have made some colleagues feel sidelined. Sidelined. Interesting choice." "Which colleagues?" I asked. She smiled. "Various stakeholders." There it was again. The fog language. No names, no dates, no substance. I leaned back slightly. "As I mentioned on the Zoom call, I'm happy to address concerns once they're documented with specifics." A flicker crossed her face. Gone in half a second. She tried a different angle. "This isn't disciplinary," she said. "It's about alignment. After situations like this, it's sometimes helpful to explore alternative roles, something with less exposure." Exposure. I looked at the job description she slid across the table. Same salary, same benefits, different title, different reporting line, zero access to core IP, a sidestep disguised as care. I didn't touch the paper. "Is this related to my patent authorship?" I asked. "No," she said too quickly. "Of course not," I raised an eyebrow. "Then why is the role restricted from the inventor register and future filings?" Silence. The plant in the corner rustled softly as the air conditioning kicked in. HR glanced at her laptop, then back at me. "That's a standard limitation." "For whom?" She exhaled, the pleasant tone cracking just a bit. "Ellen, you have to understand how this looks. You escalated externally. You involve the patent office. That creates ripples." Ripples. As if the water had been calm before someone tried to rewrite my name. "I followed the law," I said evenly, "and I documented interference. If that's considered misalignment, I'd like that definition in writing." Another pause, longer this time. She closed the laptop. "I'll need to consult legal," she said. "Please do," I replied, "and copy me on the correspondence." Her jaw tightened. She hadn't expected that. People who get sidelined usually stop asking to be copied. When the meeting ended, nothing was resolved. No demotion, no apology, just a polite standoff. But as I walked back to my desk, I noticed something new. An email notification, internal distribution list. Subject, Innovation Spotlight, Leadership Contributions. The preview text showed one name, not mine. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I saved a screenshot of the job description HR had offered. I forwarded myself the meeting invite. I wrote a short summary of the conversation while it was still fresh, dated and time-stamped. Then I opened the email. It praised vision, strategic guidance, and executive insight. No mention of authorship. No mention of engineering. Just a familiar last name placed gently next to my work. Careful, polished, almost believable. Almost. I closed my inbox and stared out the window. The city below was fully awake now. Cars moving, people crossing streets, lives colliding and separating with purpose. Systems everywhere, some honest, some not. And I realized something important. They weren't trying to erase the invention anymore. They were trying to rewrite the story around it, and stories, unlike patents, only survive if no one challenges them. I was about to. The Innovation Spotlight email spread faster than any memo I'd seen all year. By noon, it had been forwarded, replied to, reacted to. Little digital nods of approval stacked up beneath it. Clapping emojis, well-deserved. Excited for what's next. People congratulating a story they hadn't bothered to read closely. I printed it out, not because I was angry, because paper doesn't disappear. The wording was careful, almost elegant. It never said inventor. It never said author. It simply framed the narrative around visionary leadership and strategic direction, placing Blake's name near enough to the project that casual readers would connect the dots themselves. Plausible deniability, polished to a shine. I highlighted 3 sentences, circled 2 phrases, stapled the page to my growing folder. Then I checked the internal comms policy. Firma had a rule: buried deep, rarely used. Any internal communication that materially misrepresented intellectual contribution could be challenged through a formal accuracy review. Not HR, not legal. Communications governance, a department no one remembered until they needed it. I submitted the request at 12:47 p.m. Attached: the Innovation Spotlight email, my original inventor register filing, the Patent Office's legal confirmation, a comparison table showing wording inconsistencies, subject line, request for accuracy review, IP attribution, ICC legal, and HR, and the external counsel's generic intake address. Not aggressive, just complete. At 1:03, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Dr. Harper, a man said, voice low, controlled. This is communications governance. That was fast. We received your submission, he continued. We have questions. I expected that, I said. He paused. You're asserting that the internal message creates a misleading association of authorship. Yes, I replied, and I can demonstrate intent through timing, omission, and prior documented attempts to alter credit. Another pause. Longer. Can you join a call at 2 sao? He asked. I already blocked the time, I said. The call felt different from the others. No soft language, no emotional cushioning, just facts, slides, timestamps. The man from governance didn't interrupt, didn't defend. He asked questions like a surgeon, precise, unemotional, sharp. Who approved the copy? When was the final draft circulated? Why was the inventor not named? Each answer tightened the knot somewhere above Blake's office. At 2:41, he leaned back. This communication will be flagged, he said, pending review. What does that mean? I asked. It means the story pauses, he replied, and when it resumes, it must be accurate. By the time I returned to my desk, the Innovation Spotlight email had vanished from the internal feed. No announcement, no correction yet, just gone. A few people noticed. A few asked questions quietly. Someone from engineering sent me a single line on Slack. I thought something felt off. That was enough. At 4:58, as people packed up for the day, another email landed. Subject: Update to Innovation Spotlight. From Communications Governance. It was shorter, blunter. It named the invention. It named the inventor. It removed all ambiguous praise. Blake's name appeared once, in a neutral sentence, as an employee hired months after initial development. Nothing more. I didn't celebrate. I watched. Because when a narrative collapses inside a company, it doesn't do so quietly. It sends pressure backward toward whoever tried to bend it. And pressure, when trapped, looks for an exit. As I shut down my computer, I noticed a new meeting request for the next morning. Subject: Executive Review. Reputational Risk Organizer, Board Liaison Office, attendees, CEO, legal, HR, and me. No Blake. Outside, the evening air felt cooler than it had all week. The city lights reflected off the building's glass like 100 watching eyes. I didn't know what they'd say tomorrow, but I knew one thing for certain. They were no longer asking how to protect the invention. They were asking how to protect themselves. The boardroom didn't look like a battlefield. That was the trick. Soft leather chairs, warm lighting, a polished table wide enough to feel ceremonial. The kind of room designed to make difficult decisions feel civilized, almost kind. I arrived 5 minutes early, not out of nerves, out of habit. When stakes are high, time becomes leverage. The board liaison office greeted me with a nod and a glass of water placed carefully within reach. A detail. But details matter in rooms like this. The CEO entered last. No smile this time. No casual authority. He took his seat at the head of the table, folded his hands, and exhaled slowly, as if preparing to lift something heavy. Legal followed. Then HR, no assistants, no observers. This wasn't a meeting, it was an assessment. We need to discuss exposure, the CEO began, skipping pleasantries, specifically reputational exposure. I noticed what he didn't say. He didn't say your actions. He didn't say your escalation. He said exposure. Language shifts when blame becomes expensive. Legal took over, projecting a document onto the screen. A risk matrix. Columns labeled internal, regulatory, public. Rows filled with careful wording and escalating color gradients. Yellow edging toward orange. We've reviewed the sequence of events, she said, including the attempted authorship modification, the internal communication error, and the subsequent corrections. Error. Not attempt, not misconduct. Still, progress. HR spoke next, voice quieter than usual. There's concern about employee perception, she said, specifically around favoritism and governance. Favoritism. That word landed harder than any accusation so far. The CEO's jaw tightened. I was invited to speak, not formally. Just a slight turn of the head, permission without saying it out loud. I didn't come here to damage Firma, I said calmly. I came here to protect my work, my name, and compliance with the law. Everything I did is documented. Everything I asked for was reasonable. No emotion, no defense, just record. Legal nodded. That's part of the issue. Your documentation is thorough. I almost smiled. The CEO leaned forward. What do you want now? He asked. Not what will make this go away. Not how do we move on. What do you want? I took a breath. Not because I was unsure, but because clarity deserves space. I want 3 things, I said. First, a written acknowledgement, distributed internally, that I am the sole inventor with no qualifying language. Second, confirmation that no adverse employment action has been or will be taken in response to my protected activity. Third, a review of how inventorship decisions are handled going forward, so this doesn't happen to anyone else. The room was quiet. HR looked down. Legal scribbled notes. The CEO stared at the table, then back at me. You're asking us to set precedent, he said. Yes, I replied. That's how systems improve. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but calculation. You realize, he said slowly, that this changes how people see you here. I met his gaze. They already do. Another pause. Then legal spoke, carefully. These requests are defensible. HR added, and arguably necessary. The CEO closed his eyes for half a second. That was the moment he understood. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about the company surviving its own reflection. Fine, he said at last. We'll draft the acknowledgement. Legal will oversee the policy review. HR will issue a non-retaliation confirmation. He looked at me again. But understand something, Ellen. You've made yourself very visible. I nodded. I was already visible, I said. I was just silent. The meeting ended without ceremony. No handshake, no apology, just a quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted. As I stepped out of the boardroom, my phone vibrated. An internal notification. Document uploaded. Inventorship acknowledgement. Final draft time-stamped. Approved. Waiting for distribution. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, watching employees pass by in the hallway, some laughing, some tired, all unaware of how close the system had come to eating one of its own, and how narrowly it had stopped. This wasn't the end, but it was the point of no return. The acknowledgement went live at 9:02 a.m., no announcement, no all-hands meeting, just a quiet update on the internal portal, clean, formal, unmistakable. My name, sole inventor, no qualifiers, no footnotes, the kind of language that doesn't ask to be believed because it doesn't need to. I watched it load on my screen, then refreshed once, twice, still there. Paper trails have a sound when they settle. It's not loud, it's final. By mid-morning, the building exhaled, not relief, adjustment. People recalibrating how they spoke, where they stood, who they copied. Systems don't apologize, they reroute, and rerouting leaves marks. My access permissions stabilized. Shared drives opened instantly again. Calendar edits went through without approvals. The inventor register shortcut returned to my desktop right where it had always belonged. A small thing, Everything important is. At 11:14, legal sent a follow-up. Subject, policy review, inventorship, and attribution. 3 bullet points, clear timelines, an external audit window. My role listed as consulted, not responsible. Boundaries restored. That mattered more than praise. HR followed with a separate email, formal, cautious, unmistakably defensive. Non-retaliation confirmation. Effective immediately. Words chosen the way engineers choose materials, to withstand pressure. I didn't reply to either message right away. Instead, I took a walk down to the lab. The whiteboard was clean, the markers aligned. My old diagrams, recreated from memory, sat where they always had, efficient and unadorned. A junior engineer paused when he saw me. "Hey," he said. "Congrats." "Thanks," I replied. He hesitated. I didn't know how to say something earlier. I nodded. Most people don't. He smiled, relieved, and went back to work. That, too, mattered. In the afternoon, the CEO's assistant stopped by my desk. No appointment, no entourage. "He asked me to give you this," she said, placing a slim folder down carefully, like it might bite. Inside was a single page, a note, hand-signed. "Dr. Harper, the company recognizes your contribution and regrets the process that led here. We will do better. No apology, no names. It was enough." Because accountability isn't measured by tone, it's measured by what changes after. I never saw Blake again. Not in meetings, not in hallways. His name remained on the org chart for a while, then drifted into an update no one commented on. Systems have quiet exits for the people who arrive loudly and leave inconveniently. I didn't ask questions. Victory doesn't need witnesses. Weeks later, the patent office confirmation arrived in the mail. Hard copy, embossed seal catching the light. I held it for a moment longer than necessary, then filed it away. Not framed, not displayed, protected. On a Friday evening, as the office thinned and the city softened into dusk, I shut down my computer and paused. For the first time in months, there was no next move to anticipate, no counterplay to plan, no narrative to correct. Just work and ownership. I realized then that the real win wasn't the acknowledgement or the policy or the quiet recalibration of power. It was this. They didn't take my voice, they didn't take my name, and they didn't teach me to stay silent. I packed my bag and walked out, the glass doors opening without hesitation this time. Green light. Always green.